Craig Sell, and I welcome you to the PACE Insight series sponsored today by Concentrix. The subject is Empathy and Artificial Frustration, the Path to Exceptional CX. In today's world, it is critical to deliver an exceptional experience to your customer's journey. Today, we will discuss how to bring your customer's experience to the next level by designing that experience to stand out from the rest. On this PACE Insight, we are joined by Andy Bird, VP of Product Strategy, Concentrix Interaction Technologies. Good afternoon, Andy.
Hey, Craig, how are you?
I'm doing well. Well, let's just go ahead and get us kicked off here. So Andy, what is contact center AI and why should my company use it?
Yeah. So this is like the new buzz thing that's going on right now. And it's a little bit crazy because not everybody sees it for the center view that it really is. And what I mean by that is some people, when they hear AI, they immediately go, the Terminator or Matrix, right? Some movie that they've seen and they're like, okay, it's the takeover of the world. And other times they just go, oh, well, it's just one of those voice bots that did translation for your voice in a way that sounds really robotic and rote. And so people look at it from each one of those sides of the spectrum. The reality is it sits somewhere in the middle. And what you have to do is you have to look at, we focus ourselves as a B2B to C company where we're helping our customers serve their customers. We have to think of that end customer's experience and where they're going to experience you, where they want to interact for whatever reason, from tech support to customer service to buying something. Where do they want to have that experience and where can you automate things that are necessary so that you don't cause, which we'll talk a lot about, artificial frustration while you're trying to give them an easier way of doing something. So to break it down, well, when we go to the next, we'll break it down a little bit more into those categories. But I think that captures your question right there, Craig.
Yeah, very much so. Thank you. So why is AI relevant to the contact center now more than ever?
Because as I was getting ready to, just starting to allude to is the idea of where I begin that interaction and where that interaction ends up. There are things that and my friends who do AI, who are do more cognizant AI rather than pattern AI, are going to get mad at this, but there is a pattern to the way that people engage with you, right? And so you have the channel, right? Is it voice? Is it web? Web chat? Is it email? Is it social media? How I engage with you. But then there is the level or the timeline within that interaction. The beginning of an interaction, during the interaction, post-interaction, and then there's all the things that happen to make that interaction possible, to make the next interaction better. So it's relevant in that pre-interaction, AI becomes really relevant because it's getting information, and it might. A lot of people out there will say it will, but I'm going to say it might do deflection. It might satisfy that need right there at the very beginning. And if it does, good, more power to you. If I call and I can get a status on something and I can do that very, very quickly, and that's all I needed. I just needed my balance. I just needed to know why Amazon hasn't shipped that thing over to me yet. Whatever it might be, if I can do that and I can get it done quick, great. I don't need person. I don't need empathy at that point in time. I just need to know why it's not here or when it's going to be here, right? I need a piece of information. That is why it's relevant, is I can now take that call and now I can keep that agent ready to take the call that needs more in depth and may have to make a human emotive decision on whether or not to do something benevolent for the customer or not so benevolent for the customer.
Exactly. So what aspects of contact center AI should customer service leaders be investing in now and why?
Really, I think that the big thing is starting with the engine. You need to build, I keep telling everybody, work on your platform and the way that you want to orchestrate it today, because those endpoints are going to change and they're going to evolve over time. And here's what I mean by that. Today, you may want, going back to the timeline of AI, today you might want that pre-interaction, but then you might later find as you do that sentiment is becoming really important. So now I all of a sudden want post-interaction AI to look at the sentiment of my calls to see how to deal with them better. So it's building that initial building block. Which natural language engine am I going to use? Which speech, not just the natural language, but the speech. But then which AI automation tool can I use that will help me? And I always tell everybody, do the MVP, right? Minimum viable product. So start somewhere, but know that you're building that initial building block, which is a platform for you to build off of later. And really that comes with engaging the right people, the right partner to do that, the one who has kind of seen those. I mean, I'm not mentioning any names or saying anything like that. I've only interviewed 25 different AI vendors, so I can't tell you that we're experts or not, but we are. So
interesting. So how do I get started, and where would be the best place to start?
Again, is set yourself up for that MVP. Find out where the biggest ROI is going to be. Where's the biggest need? And so I love these three questions. These are the three questions I always ask a customer. What's your problem, right? What are your goals, and how do you measure both? So if you just take I take a small sheet of paper for everything. I got like 3 of them on my desk right now. Sheet of paper that I just write notes, but simple as that is, what is the biggest problem that I'm facing right now? What are the objectives that I need to accomplish that my boss has told me to, or that the company is going towards? And how do I measure that? If you identify that, you'll know where to put AI right away. Which one of those 4 areas, pre, during, post, or after the fact.
Amazing. So how do small to mid-sized companies use contact center AI? And does AI only really make sense for large contact centers?
Yeah, that is such a good question. It's both. We see disruptors everywhere, right? Some of these disruptor startups that are up and coming, they're almost exclusively using AI because they don't have the wherewithal and the means to staff out a big contact center group. So if that's the case, then they can leverage it even more so than the enterprise. So since the advent of real good cloud-based architecture and cloud-based systems, it's really, really accessible for everybody. So it doesn't matter if you're a mom and pop shop or your enterprise, there is a way that you can leverage AI to your needs. Now, like I said at the very beginning, say all this to say, AI is great. Don't cause yourself or your customers artificial frustration just because you want to have the AI checkbox. Find out where it's going to benefit you before you jump onto the bandwagon.
Gotcha. So what do you think? Is there such thing as over automation?
No. Yeah, that's where artificial frustration, which is probably, well, anyway, without going into that good joke, I've caused probably a ton of artificial frustration in my life for those around me, but that's where you get the real artificial frustration, is where you're forcing AI into an area for the wrong reasons. If you're going for a deflection and you've run it on the front end, and that interaction now needs a human touch to it, it needs empathy, it needs AI doesn't make decisions really outside. Now, again, like I said before, there's a couple companies that are claiming that this is starting to happen, but typically it's done based upon patterns. It's not based upon, I'll give you a great example. I bought a product recently and I damaged the product in the unboxing of it. And it was 100% my fault. But I had this new product, I want it to look good, and I've damaged it now. So I called, just because I do stuff like this, I don't know that everybody does, just to kind of see what my response would be. I called the company and they said, hey, welcome to XYZ Products family. We don't care how you did it. Here's a new part, it's coming to your thing. Don't even send us the old one back. If I couldn't have experienced that in automation, because it took that human touch. And the fact that they listened to my whole entire story, which, as you can tell, I talk a lot. So here I am babbling on about the story. And she pretty much just said, please, sir, shut up. Welcome to the family. We're going to give you everything you need and more. And they did. And I've now referred that product to 12 of my friends. 12. I've been counting them. 12 of my friends. So they have, now I don't know that all 12 have gone out and bought them, but I know at least a half a dozen of them have. Wow. The return for them, now they can't even check that. So that's where human empathy totally superseded AI. So yes, to answer your question in a long-winded format, which I'm really good at doing, you can, if I had been into an automated system and I tried to go, okay, I want to do a return, they would never have heard my story of how my son and I were lifting it out of the box and it scraped on the concrete. They never would have heard all that, and they never would have said, hey, welcome to the family. And that's a big deal. So really big deal.
Exactly. Wow. So what would fall under automation in the contact center? For instance, bots, chatbots, agent guidance.
Anything that's automated. If you were to ask, this is totally Andy, this is not the industry, is not anything else. Bots drive me crazy as a term that's used. And I use them. So, but bots, it reminds you of R2D2, right? That's like sitting there doing the doodle. It's not necessarily like that. It's just automation. And so when you're looking at where automation fits, it's where do I have things that are patterned, that are rote, that can easily be done to make that end user customer's life better. That's the whole thing. You know, one of the mainstays that we have in our group is humanity matters. And so why do I want to, in any way, shape, or form, make somebody's life more difficult? I want to make it easier. So to answer your questions very simply is anywhere that I can automate based upon patterns or known behaviors. If there's a known behavior that's going to occur, I can definitely take that away from putting that burden on the agent.
Andy, in your opinion, where in the contact center is AI most effective?
I'll start with where I think it's least effective. I am not the biggest fan on the sentiment stuff on AI because I think that's where you get the highest discrepancies. It's hard to determine sentiment because I can say something to you and I can say it with a smile on my face, and I can say something really bad. Like I can say, hey, well, I'm not going to do it to you, Craig, but I can say, hey, Joe Schmo, go pound sand. And I could smile while I do it. How is the AI going to pick up that sentiment? They can't pick up sarcasm necessarily. So I don't get me wrong, sentiment analysis has its use, but that's probably the least place that I would start with, right? That I typically won't start on the back end. Typically want to start on that front end. And then agent assist really qualifies you to knowing your agents really well and knowing their interactions. And so I don't know that I start there. So I typically start on that front end and then go from the front end and move into the other areas. So that's because typically I get the best call deflection, the best, KPIs are going to come out of that front end of the call. Rather than going into the road IVR, I always like using the Seinfeld example where Kramer's on there. Well, press 1 for this movie, press 2 for Casablanca, press 3 for Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. Why don't you just tell me what movie you want to see, right? Get it done there where you're just asking the questions and getting the information and giving the information rather than doing it in the harder areas. And if you know your agents really well, then agent assist is really, really fun because it can really take agent conversation and even empathy to another level.
So what do you think? Will AI account for empathy?
Yeah. Oh, see, I answered my own question right as I did. It won't account for empathy, but it helps with empathy, right? If in that particular scenario where I was talking about that product, if that agent had got a suggestion that said, make sure you welcome them to the family, based upon they could hear the angst in my voice that I unboxed this product and I just spent $700 on it, if they could hear that, and then they made a suggestion by utilizing AI during that call to give the agent a reminder, hey, make sure you're welcome to the family. And, our return, we have a ubiquitous 30-day do whatever for them policy. If those reminders coming up at that point in time would be very effective. So I think it assists in empathy. Will it ever have empathy? I mean, I don't know. I've watched enough sci-fi films that I'm hopeful that it will someday, but when it came to Battlestar Galactica, did the Borg ever really get empathy? I don't know that they did.
Great information today, Andy. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
No, just we take AI for what it is, be realistic about it, and then don't over implement it and don't put it in areas. If you're going to be experimental in areas, do it in a percentage of interactions. Don't do it ubiquitously in interactions. Test it, measure the data, and then refine. And it's always the best course of action.
Well, thank you to our viewers for listening today, and thanks to Andy Bird of Concentrix as our sponsor. Again, I am Craig Sell with Pace, and listen in for the next big insight coming your way soon. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Craig.